On her wedding day, her dog suddenly went missing. Then she discovered the heartbreaking reason. Emma stood before the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting the pristine white wedding gown. Her eyes shimmered with a mix of happiness and nervousness. The excitement surged within her like a tidal wave, but it was also a joy so overwhelming it seemed to envelop every part of her being. The wedding day was nearly here, and every detail, had been prepared perfectly. She had been planning for this special day for an entire year, with all her passion and dedication. The room was filled with a soft golden light from the sun streaming through the window, casting a warm glow on Emma's beautiful wedding dress. The long flowing gown, with intricate lace details painstakingly hand-stitched, made her look like a princess straight out of a fairy tale. Her golden hair was styled gracefully, with gentle curls framing her face. Emma felt like she was living in a dream. But amidst all this perfection, there was one thing she could imagine being without. That was Buddy, the golden retriever she had raised since childhood. Buddy was a gift from her parents on her 13th birthday, and from that moment on, he became an inseparable companion in Emma's life. In the mornings when Emma woke up to get ready for school, Buddy always sat by her side, looking up at her with eyes full of loyalty, like a best friend. In the afternoons, when Emma returned home, Buddy would wag his tail, greeting her with unconditional love and affection. Even on days when she felt lonely or sad, Buddy would quietly lie beside her, offering comfort and companionship. Today, on her most important day, Emma couldn't imagine what her wedding would be like without Buddy by her side. He had become a vital part of her life, and she wanted him to share the most important moment of her life with her. So Emma had planned for Buddy to take part in the ceremony in the most special way. Buddy will carry the bouquet, right? Emma said gently to the dog, who was lying on the bed beside her, his eyes wide open watching her intently. Despite being 15 years old and no longer as spry as he once was, Buddy was always there for Emma, following her closely whenever he had the chance. Whether it was in the cold mornings when she sipped her coffee, or in the evenings when she prepared dinner, Buddy was always her silent companion. And today this elderly dog would be the only friend she had beside her at the altar. Em closed her eyes, imagining the scene of Buddy walking beside her, carrying a small wedding bouquet, like the most loyal companion. Over the years, Buddy had witnessed all the ups and downs in her life. From the early days when she was a young girl, to the time she grew up and decided to marry, Buddy had always been by her side. And today, Emma was determined that Buddy would play an essential part in the wedding, making it complete. She suddenly recalled the wonderful memories she had shared with Buddy. Every time the family went on vacation, Buddy was the best travel companion. Long walks in the park, morning runs together, quiet afternoons sitting side by side on the grass. These moments played in Emma's mind like an endless movie. At that moment, Emma's grandmother entered the room, holding a small bag with wedding essentials. She smiled, seeing Emma standing before the mirror with a face full of happiness, yet tinged with a bit of anxiety. "My dear, you look beautiful today. Where is Buddy? Will he walk down the aisle with you?" her grandmother asked, her voice warm and full of concern. Emma smiled and turned to look at her grandmother, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Yes. Buddy will carry the bouquet at the wedding. I can't imagine it without him." Her grandmother nodded, her eyes filled with a hint of sadness. "You've raised Buddy since he was small, and has always been by your side, hasn't he? But you must also remember, though Buddy is part of our family, he is getting old. You need to prepare yourself, because he may not be able to walk with you all the way." Emma looked at her grandmother, a lump forming in her throat. She knew her grandmother was right. Buddy was old, his legs not as quick as they once were, his eyes growing dimmer with time. But the love Buddy had for her had never changed, and Emma couldn't imagine her wedding without him. Throughout the day, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Buddy. He had been a part of her family for so many years. At that moment, all she wished for was that Buddy would be healthy and happy enough to attend her wedding, because that was the only thing she wanted on this special day. As Emma's wedding day drew nearer, an invisible weight of worry settled in her heart. But no matter what, she would have Buddy by her side, the most wonderful friend she could ever wish for. The day of Emma's wedding had arrived, and the atmosphere in the garden was like a picturesque painting. Guests gathered in the romantic setting, the soft afternoon sunlight casting a warm glow, creating an atmosphere filled with both warmth and anticipation. Emma stood before them, in her magnificent wedding gown, her hands tightly gripping the pristine white bouquet. Everything was perfect. But there was one thing she couldn't stop thinking about: Buddy. the golden retriever who had been with her through it all. Buddy was her loyal companion, the one friend who had never left her during difficult times. According to the plan, Buddy was supposed to carry the bouquet and walk down the aisle with her, like a member of the family, sharing in the biggest moment of her life. Everything went smoothly until the most important part of the ceremony, the moment Emma would walk down the aisle to officially declare her union with the man she loved. At this moment, all eyes were on her, admiring glances, smiles of joy from the guests. Everything seemed like a dream. She took a delicate step forward, eagerly waiting for Buddy to bring the bouquet to her, just as they had planned. But then the unexpected happened. As it was Buddy's turn to walk forward, carrying the bouquet and following Emma, the crowd suddenly fell silent. Buddy was supposed to walk up, hold the bouquet in his mouth, and present it to her in front of all their loved ones, but there was no sign of him. The room grew still, a strange feeling of unease enveloping everyone. Emma stood there waiting, confused, not understanding what was happening. Emma's mother, a caring woman full of concern, approached her, her voice trembling as she spoke softly. "Emma, we haven't seen Buddy this morning. He disappeared early today." The words hit Emma like a punch to the heart, and all the joy she had been feeling seemed to drain away in an instant. Her throat tightened, a wave of panic rising that she couldn't suppress. She couldn't believe her ears. "No, that can't be Buddy, can't he just leave? He can't disappear on my wedding day." Whispers filled the air. But Emma couldn't hear anything except the thumping of her own heart. Her best friend, her loyal companion, missing. Where could he have gone? Why was he gone, especially today, of all? Fear and worry surged within her. She couldn't stand still any longer, not without knowing what happened. She turned to her mother, then to the friends standing nearby, her eyes wide with panic. "I have to find Buddy. I can't leave him alone. He's been with me for so many years. I can just abandon him." Without a second thought, Emma quickly lifted the hem of her wedding dress and started running. Her steps were fast and determined, each one echoing her urgency. The guests at the wedding were taken aback, but no one could stop her. No one could understand the depth of the bond she shared with Buddy. They didn't know that Buddy had been a constant presence in her life, always there when she needed him. She ran outside into the garden, taking deep breaths, praying that nothing serious had happened. The garden gate swung open, and Emma rushed into the familiar green space, calling out for Buddy, her voice shaking with panic. "Buddy, Buddy," her voice choked, unable to get out more than those two words. Her eyes scanned every corner, from the garden in front to the back of the house, the place where she knew Buddy loved to spend time. Every step she took felt like an eternity, yet there was still no sign of her beloved dog. She called again, moving faster, heading toward the spots where Buddy would often go when he wanted some peace and quiet. The hill behind the garden, a place Buddy liked to sit, where he always went to relax. Without thinking, Emma ran toward it, her steps frantic as if she had no time to waste. Her heart pounded in her chest, filled with fear and anxiety. She never imagined this day would come, never thought that, on the most important day of her life, she would have to face the possibility of losing Buddy. Her beloved dog, the closest friend she had known for years. Where was he now? Emma reached the hill, her eyes frantically searching the surroundings. And then she saw a familiar figure. It was Buddy. The dog had found a quiet spot to rest, lying peacefully in the grass. His eyes, usually bright and full of life, were now dim and wary. It wasn't that he didn't want to be there. It was that Buddy had grown too weak. He knew he couldn't participate in the celebration. He didn't want to intrude on Emma's happiness on her big day. With all the love he had for her, Buddy had chosen to withdraw, finding a peaceful place to rest as he neared the end of his journey. Emma's heart shattered as she saw her dog lying there, fragile but still full of love. No words could express the emotions she felt in that moment. She rushed to Buddy aside, gently picking him up, determined not to let him slip away on this day. Emma stood still, cradling Buddy in her arms, as if she couldn't bear to let him go, unwilling to face the truth that had just become painfully clear. Her heart ached, each beat thudding heavily against her chest as she looked at Buddy, her loyal companion lying quietly in her arms. It wasn't death, but it was something just as heart-wrenching. Buddy was too weak, his strength seemingly drained after a long journey. And though Emma didn't want to face it, the truth was undeniable. Buddy could take part in her wedding. Couldn't he carry the bouquet to her as she had dreamt? The dog looked up at her with cloudy eyes, as though trying to understand everything that was happening. Only those eyes remained bright, filled with affection. while the rest of him was exhausted, worn. Emma sat down beside him, unable to say a word. The sorrow and worry choked her, leaving her speechless. Memories of Buddy flooded her mind like an endless stream, and she felt each moment they had shared together. Buddy's gaze seemed to say something, as if he understood that this day had come, the day when he would have to leave her. Emma held Buddy tightly, not wanting to leave him alone, but deep down she knew that if she kept him here, in his weakened state, things would only worsen. She had always known this day would come, the day when Buddy wouldn't have the strength to run and play anymore, the day when he would face the final days of his life. But she had never imagined it would happen on such an important day. Today was the day she would embark on a new chapter of her life, but it was also the day Buddy had to say goodbye. Emma stood up, still holding Buddy in her arms. Without hesitation, she decided to take him to the veterinary clinic right away. She couldn't let Buddy stay here on this hill, unable to get the care he needed, unable to receive the final love and attention Emma could give him. The wedding, all the plans, everything else, none of it mattered now. Buddy's life was all that mattered. With hurried steps, Emma moved toward the car, her hands trembling, but her heart had hardened. She knew one thing: Buddy had to be saved. Even if it was just a small chance, she wouldn't give up. She wouldn't let Buddy slip away quietly, as if he were just an animal, a life that didn't matter. On the way to the clinic, Emma held Buddy close, her eyes constantly welling up with tears. She couldn't suppress her emotions, but deep down she understood that if Buddy wasn't saved, she wouldn't be able to forgive herself. Buddy had been an irreplaceable part of her life, and now she couldn't let him go without doing everything she could. When they arrived at the veterinary clinic, Emma rushed inside seeking the doctor. She didn't need to say much. Her anxious eyes and trembling figure were enough for the vet to understand the gravity of the situation. The veterinarian, experienced as he was, couldn't hide his concern when he saw Buddy. The dog was far weaker than Emma had imagined. The doctor immediately ordered tests and began the necessary treatments to help Buddy recover. Emma sat in the waiting room, clutching a handkerchief, her eyes never leaving the door to the emergency room. Time stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Every moment was a test, and during this time, Emma felt the preciousness of each second she could spend with Buddy. An hour later, the doctor emerged, his face thoughtful. Emma stood up, hope in her eyes, but also a trace of fear. The doctor smiled softly, warmly, as if to reassure her. "Your dog is not beyond help. Although he is very weak, thanks to the immediate care he's received, Buddy will recover some. However, we can avoid the effects of his age. But at least he can be with you for a little while longer." Emma let out a sigh of relief, but a deep, lingering worry still gnawed at her. She thanked the doctor and quickly went to the care room where Buddy was resting. The dog was stable now, no longer whimpering or curling up in pain, but his eyes had regained the full brightness they once had. Emma sat down beside him, stroking his golden fur gently. "I'll never leave you. I won't let you go alone. We still have a long road ahead of us. You need to get better, so you can see me marry. You have to live to see me happy." Time in the clinic seemed to drag on endlessly. She sat with Buddy, never leaving his side, as if honoring the promises she had made to him from the very beginning. These precious moments, she didn't want to miss. And when everything finally stabilized, the doctor gave the go-ahead for Buddy to be discharged, with strict instructions for careful aftercare. With diligent care, Buddy slowly began to recover, and Emma's wedding was postponed to the afternoon, like a miracle. She knew her dog would return, that he would be there for her special day, and that was all she needed right now. The next day, when Buddy appeared, his eyes shining and his appearance stronger, Emma saw him as though he were smiling, as if all the struggles had passed. Both Emma and Buddy had overcome a great challenge together, and they would continue to walk side by side on the journey of life. For Emma, every moment with Buddy from now on would be more precious than ever. Emma's wedding day had passed in a whirlwind of joy and relief, with Buddy, though frail, still by her side. The dog had carried the bouquet down the aisle, a perfect member of the family, part of the celebration, part of the moment. But once the ceremony was over, despite the happiness of the day, Emma couldn't forget the trials they had both endured in the days leading up to it. The morning after the wedding, Emma woke up to a quiet stillness. She found Buddy lying beside her, but something felt different. He no longer sprang up with the energy he once had, no longer greeted her with the same eager wag of his tail. Despite the doctor's reassurance that Buddy could recover with time, Emma knew the truth: her dog was aging, and his once vibrant spirit had begun to fade. Each of Buddy's steps seemed more labored, his eyes more tired. Emma knew that their time together was growing shorter, but instead of retreating into sorrow, she made a decision that would shape the rest of their days. She would cherish every moment they had left. No longer would she allow work to consume her life. Instead, she dedicated herself fully to her faithful companion. Each morning, she and Buddy took leisurely walks in the park, the place Buddy loved most. They sat beneath towering old trees, soaking in the fresh air, savoring the calm of the quiet mornings. In these moments, Emma felt as though she was truly appreciating each second, each breath beside him. As the days passed, Emma also felt a deep need to give back to honor the love and loyalty Buddy had shown her over the years. She began volunteering with animal shelters, helping abandoned dogs, and even adopting several more into her home. The small, scrappy dogs quickly grew attached to her, and Emma couldn't help but think of Buddy. How he had always been there for her, a constant presence in her life. By taking care of these other dogs, she felt as though she was sharing the love Buddy had given her, allowing it to reach beyond just the two of them. Though Buddy's health continued to decline, his affection for Emma never wavered. Each day he would still rest his head on her lap, looking up at her with eyes full of the same love that had always been there. Emma came to understand that while Buddy's body was no longer the same, the bond they shared was as strong as ever. His loyalty, his companionship, they would never fade, even as his physical presence did. As the months went by, Emma noticed that Buddy's energy seemed to slip further away. His steps became slower, his body heavier, and he would often rest for long hours by the window, watching the world go by. Emma had grown used to the quiet stillness that surrounded him, but it was a stillness that carried with it an undeniable sense of finality. Then one peaceful morning, as Emma woke to the sound of birds singing outside, she found Buddy lying quietly beside her, body still. He had passed away in his sleep, just as he had always lived, calmly, without fuss and with love in his heart. Emma couldn't hold back the tears. Her heart shattered as she gently stroked his fur, still soft, but even in her grief, she knew that Buddy had lived a full life. He had given her everything, and in return she had given him all her love. Emma buried Buddy in the small garden behind her house, beneath the large oak tree they had often sat under during their walks. She planted a flower bed around him, a symbol of the life he had shared with her. As she knelt by his resting place, she whispered softly, "You will always be a part of me. I will carry your love in my heart forever." Though Buddy was no longer with her in body, Emma knew that he would never truly leave her. His spirit, his love, would stay with her always, just as it had when he was alive. She continued to volunteer at the shelters, helping stray dogs find homes, and she gave them the same love she had given Buddy. She wanted to make sure that, through her actions, Buddy's legacy would live on. And though the pain of losing him would never fully go away, Emma knew that the love they shared would remain an indelible part of her life. She would continue to love and honor him by sharing that love with others, by offering comfort and care to the animals who need it most. For Buddy had taught her the greatest lesson of all, that love, in its purest form, never truly dies. It just lives on in the hearts of those who carry it forward. As Emma looked out into the horizon, the wind whispered through the trees, and for a moment, she swore she could hear Buddy's gentle footsteps beside her.